the opening event for SQIFF, which is crafting accessible films with us, We Crip Film. Yay! Before I get started in today's event, I just want to do a little bit of accessible housekeeping. So your exit is just out here. The accessible toilets are just round to the left. There is a quiet space up on the second floor. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. I'm getting nods. Second floor. Amazing. Feel free to wear masks. Feel free to make movement. This is very much a relaxed vibe. So if you need to leave, leave. If you need to make noise, make noise. Very much a relaxed environment. I want to say thank you to our BSL interpreters, Lucy and Louise, and also thank you to our live captioners, Andrew and Louisa. Woo! Amazing. I think, so first off, everybody, hello, my name is Clare Baines. My pronouns are she, her, and today I will be moderating the panel. I'm an inclusion partner at the BFI. I'm also a filmmaker, and I run a podcast called Crip Club, which is all about authentic disability representation. I'm now going to self-describe for anybody with sight loss. So I'm a white woman in my 20s. I'm wearing a rather fabulous red, neuromantic style top, leopard print trousers because leopard print is neutral, and I've got some Kill Bill yellow and black trainers on. Today I have my BFI hat on, and I would love to introduce you into the world of We Crip Film. So We Crip Film has been running for the past 5 years, and it's acted as our disability screen advisory group. So it's made up of disabled film professionals, and they advise on everything from policy through to our activity, through to what kind of films are we making, what representation is the BFI creating. We Crip Film is all about disability justice. The principles formed by Sins Invalid, so we're very much into anti-ableism, cross-disability solidarity, gorgeous intersectionality. This is why we're here at SQIFF. And also collective liberation. Woo, yeah, thank you. So we're going to do this session today in 2 halves. So the first half is going to be a classic panel. We're going to be yapping, we're going to be discussing things. And then the second half is a more non-traditional networking. It's something that we've definitely discussed a lot in terms of networking not being accessible. It's not a very welcoming environment. How can we disrupt that? How can we change that? So we've put together a lonely arts board. Ooh. So we have a Polaroid film camera. You can take a photo if that's something that you're into. Put up there your picture, your Instagram, your email, whatever works best for you, and just kind of talk about what you're looking for. So perhaps you're looking to make connections in terms of filmmaking. Perhaps you're just here to make other disabled friends. Yeah, it's kind of trying to disrupt it. Also, if film, taking a photo isn't for you, we also have little postcards, so you can draw a little design, you can do a little creative situation, and that's going to be the second half of today's session. So, now for the Q&A. There will be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions, so I'm just putting that into your brain. So if you have any questions, there'll be time at the end to ask. I'm joined by some really wonderful people to my left. I have Charlie Little and Tara Brown, and please can you introduce yourself and self-describe?
Of course. Hello everyone. Is this microphone working okay? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Charlie Little, and I'm really excited to be here at SQIFF. SQIFF has definitely had a lot of special memories and a place in my heart. It's, one of the first, if only, accessible film festivals I could really engage with. My pronouns are she, they, and I am a queer, deafblind film exhibition access consultant and film curator, and of course a member of We Crip Film. For visual self-description, I always find this hard, especially as a partially sighted person myself. Yeah. Claire very much relates. I think, yes, a white young person, yes, in my mid-20s, I got fairly dark blonde style Wolfka, if you know, you know. We have been talking about how I look like a gay 12-year-old boy today. Blue jeans, Sambas, SQIFF t-shirt. Shout out for the merch table. Black shirt, gold chain. But yeah, I think that's
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I look really handsome. I look
very handsome. Very, very handsome. Now to you, Tara.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name's Tara Brown. I use they them pronouns. I can describe myself as a black, fat, disabled, trans, queer, feminist film curator. I also do evaluation consultation creatively because I don't have a degree. I am wearing really shiny green lace-up boots that aren't Doc Martens, orange sort of lacy tights. I'm also wearing leopard print on the bottom, and I've got a pink fake satin pussy bow blouse, and my hair's in a cane row. I have a stick, my stick sort of poking me in the back. I've been doing film curating since 2013, doing it all the wrong way all the time, which is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And always fighting to make films as diverse and accessible and brilliant as possible. And I've been in a lot of places. Started off with one of my besties, Teresa here, doing whatever DIY film, which was also a disabled-led queer DIY film festival. I also work for Fringe Queer Film and Arts Fest, really funny thing, Fringe in Scotland, which is also queer. I'm currently working on London Film Festival and Sheffield Stock Fest. And I'll hold it there for now. Let's talk.
Welcome to our lovely panelists! Yay! Gorgeous. So the way that we pitch this is kind of taking you through the whole film birthing process. So we're going to start with development, with story, with character. So the first question I have for my lovely, lovely panelists is that, let's say somebody has an idea for a film that doesn't involve a disabled character, like they've fleshed it out, they're like, here's my story, there's no disabled character. How does somebody add one and ensure it's not just like a tick boxing exercise? How do you involve the disability within film? That's the question.
Oh, okay. I think my first note is that you can cast a disabled actor into any role that you have in your film. Like
Yes.
that's kind of the easiest, most makes sense way to do it. Go from there, go with talent, and just ensure that the person who is your actor is not a sort of a person that you're going to put all your tropes in. They're not a character that's sort of used in like a really skeezy way or cured or some kind of like it's about just good writing. You're just writing a real character like you would with any of your other roles.
I think fundamentally people just need to reframe the way that they think about disability. So the way that non-disabled people even think about disabled people's roles in society. And I think so many of us have unconscious bias that we have to learn to unlearn. So, if your default is that someone's white, straight, a man, then non-disabled, I think that is a huge issue that, all of us are on a journey of unlearning. But I think in terms of character development, like Tara's saying, making sure that they're not just a stereotype and that they're not just a plot device or a prop for other characters. I think it is just fundamentally about creating characters that are flawed, that have personality, and disabled stories are just as deserving to be told. I think one example of recent filmmaking and storytelling, and this is a series, but our friend Kyla Harris wrote and directed and
starred. I don't know. It's really good.
Yeah. We might regret this. Yeah.
But you won't regret this because
We
you're
also
gonna watch
had
it.
3 access coordinators.
3 access coordinators, which is also a very good point to add on to in terms of like how do you make your productions accessible. I'm going to go back to just quickly on the point that you said of like how disability can often be used as like a catalyst almost. It's just like a way to advance plot versus actually talking about the lived experience or living with a disability. So making that more authentic, and that's a really great way to involve disabled people in your script writing. If you're not disabled yourself, that's a really great way to collaborate. But speaking of, how do you make your productions accessible? We had a little shout out from the audience. Access coordinators! Ba-ba-bam! Could somebody please explain to me what an access coordinator is?
Charlie?
Yeah, so an access coordinator in terms of production would be someone whose designated role is to oversee and make sure that access is very much embedded for cast, for crew, venue access, workplace culture. So yeah, even though access should, be on everyone's mind, it's really important to work with someone with lived experience, with expertise, and making sure that everyone's needs are met and that they, it doesn't become a barrier later on. So it's really important to work with an access coordinator before production, not leaving it to the last minute. So that's a nutshell definition.
That's a good definition. And I think this is the thing with an access coordinator is that it's a relatively new role, similar to like an intimacy coordinator. I think it's definitely addressing something that's actors have experienced in terms of like their needs not being met. So like, how do you address those needs, and how do you have somebody on set to be able to advocate for you and your requirements? I think what you said was really important in terms of like they all have lived experience. So all of the people who've recently been trained up as access coordinators are themselves disabled. So you have that understanding on set. The BFI has recently piloted access coordinators on their, it's called Future Takes, it's like high budget shorts. And it was interesting because it's not just only for the cast, it's for the crew as well. And being able to send out a blanket email to everybody being like, you can come talk to us if you have any access requirements, even if you don't identify as disabled, come have a conversation, come have a Zoom call, let's have a chat. That's when something like an access passport is like really important in terms of how do you document that, how do you share that with people, how do you let people know what your access requirements are. Access coordinators are really wonderful. I don't know if you had anything to add, Tara.
I was going to say that in your first job of your budget, you must assign an access line in your budget.
Gorgeous.
Like way too often, it's sort of done at the end, and it's like, oh crap, this person might need something, but oh, we haven't thought of it, so I'm so sorry we can't include you, and we know it's bullshit. So in your first draft, the access line will be there. Otherwise, I don't know what you're expecting to do later on. All you're going to do later on is compromise, make them feel like a burden, and that's for cast and crew and everyone involved. So
yeah, absolutely. And not to bring it back to the BFI, but the BFI always has access budgets. So there's like a whole pot of money that exists if you do get BFI funding, where if you have access needs, you just can ask for it. And not many people have been using it, which is also really interesting in terms of, are these the films that we're funding because we know that there are disabled people on set? It's a whole conversation. But we've got a whistle stop tour, so I'm going to move us on to post and distribution. Post-production is often a topic that I feel like doesn't get brought into the conversation very often, especially in terms of like accessibility. It isn't discussed. How can this phase of production be made more accessible, or do you think it inherently is already accessible but just not spoken about?
So the work I do specializes in distribution and exhibition, so once the films are made. And I think the overarching issue is that, and that goes back to what we were just talking about in terms of budget, is that access isn't necessarily thought of holistically, and ideally access and disability inclusion is thought of as early as possible from even, the blueprint of your project. The way that you shoot a film might affect the position of descriptive subtitles, for example. If you're shooting a film where there's dialogue that's in British Sign Language, but it's actually cut off, then obviously that is not very accessible. So really thinking about it from the beginning, but in terms of making the release of the film accessible to as wide an audience as possible. I think just thinking before you get to that point that we're going to want to make sure that there's descriptive subtitles, we're going to want to make sure that there's audio description. And the issue I come across, which is also a barrier for disabled critics, for disabled programmers, is that these materials aren't necessarily made until the film is in the cinema. They're not thinking about the festival circuit, they're not thinking about critics' reviews, because they're automatically assuming that there won't be people that need audio description, that need descriptive subtitles. There was a film recently, Kneecap, which I personally really enjoyed. And definitely, yeah, Irish language film, amazing, but that film had a lot of creative captions which weren't very accessible, and it affected the actual standard descriptive subtitles. So when I went to watch it in the cinema, I couldn't follow some of the scenes, and that's just because that just wasn't thought about when they actually shot the film, when they edited it. I think I'm going off tangent a bit. But
no, I think that's a really interesting case study, because I think it's interesting for people to understand what is the real implications of how you shoot and what that means for audiences and how can you access more deaf and disabled audiences.
Yeah, and when you have accessibility in the blueprint of your budget and you think about what those means, and not just looking after the actors and holistically, but also the production side of making sure you have the budget set aside to create the subtitles and the audio description. So many times I've been I would want to program a film, and I got to the distribution company, because that's where you go through, and they'd be like, oh sorry, we don't have them, and that's just the end of conversation. And it's really frustrating, because at the other end, the audience is coming to see the film, so you have to really look through between the lines of the calendars to actually see if there's an accessible screening of the film that you want to see. So I think it's important, and it's also knowing that those resources are very much out there. Back in I know that SQIFF, I don't know if they still do that, they would have volunteers actually creating subtitles and description. We did that with whatever film as well. We'd have volunteers actually working really hard, making subtitles for all the films. You look at the LFF screenings, London Film Festival coming up. I think pretty much all the films that are non-English language have subtitles, but then out of that, it's a bit of a rodeo. Unless maybe it's a disability film, and then they might think about it. But I think it's that attitude of being maybe sometimes, occasionally. But I think maybe just maybe other films that aren't disability films might be worth having subtitles and audio description as well, because we love film, we want to see as many films as possible, and we just want to be able to do that accessibly. Why is that word hard to say?
Accessibly.
No, I think you are allowed to engage access coordinators, professional subtitlers, audio describers, as early as possible. You don't have to wait until the film is done. You can get those quotes. You can ask for their advice. Engage these professionals as early as possible. And there's a wealth of free knowledge and resources out there. I think a lot of us in the industry, in the sector, are quite happy to share resources, to share information. But yeah, and I think what Tara's saying about being a disabled programmer, someone that needs to access subtitles, it's just that automatic assumption that there are people that these people aren't working in the sector, and you have this vicious cycle of we want to welcome disabled people into the sector, and then making it impossible for them to actually do that. So yeah.
Or making the job twice as hard, because I'm watching these films without the subtitles, and I'm having to focus more, which means I can actually do less work. But I don't think they see it that way, because they're like, well, you're not partially sighted, and that's not just who it's for.
And I think that's also why descriptive subtitles as a name is really important, because I think within the industry there's lots of is it closed captions, is it open captions, is it subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing? Why is descriptive subtitles A good term. I know you've written about this, Charlie, so I'm looking to you to explain why it's such a gorgeous, gorgeous term.
Yeah, so for a bit of context, I work with Matchbox Cine. I'm sure some of you will know them. They're a Glasgow-based exhibitor, but also a team of really fantastic subtitlers and audio descriptors. Yeah, so we really push for the term descriptive subtitles for a few reasons. One big reason is that, so just to give context, descriptive subtitles, when I say descriptive subtitles, is dialogue and descriptions of the soundtrack, so music effects, sound effects, maybe speech identifiers, so where it says who's speaking if it's not clear on screen. So traditionally for deaf and hard of hearing audiences, but there's a range of people who benefit and use descriptive subtitles, and we see it on streaming platforms, we see it on our mobile phones and social media. Hearing and deaf audiences are engaging in the use of descriptive subtitles. So just to give that as some context, so the term descriptive subtitles, unlike terms like subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing, HOH captions, they don't specify or target the audience that's presumed to be using them. I've been in the situation where I've had hearing people say to me that there was a screening they really wanted to go to, but it was titled, subtitled for deaf and hard of hearing, and they didn't think that was for them. Like they were saying it out good intention, as in they didn't want to take up space as a hearing person, but they just didn't understand that that's just an industry term. There's a few other kind of issues that have come about from using subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, and that's just in terms of industry kind of miscommunication. But I just think descriptive subtitles, I think it's a very distinctive, easily understood term. And again, I like that it doesn't specify or target the, or label the audience either. So I think it's quite easy to distinguish it from, say, dialogue subtitles or English language subtitles, which isn't necessarily accessible for people who need to hear the fuller soundtrack, whether that's due to auditory processing issues. Some neurodivergent people prefer descriptive subtitles, even people whose first language isn't necessarily English. But yeah, I could talk about it all day. I'm trying to keep it.
That was lovely. That was so nice. No, that was really good. I think that's the things like coming into the space, like not assuming that everybody knows everything. So that was really useful. Thank you. I also just want to do a little plug for another project that you've worked on in terms of, let's say, there might be some film programmers in the audience today. Charlie has worked for this organisation in Matchbox Cine, and they've created a resource called Sidecard, which lists.
Okay, I'll take over.
I'll let you talk again, sorry.
Yeah, so this would be great for anyone here who's used to actually like creating or commissioning access materials. So by access materials, I mean subtitle files, audio description files, things like that, anything kind of material based related to cinema accessibility. So Sidecard was a joint funded initiative from Matchbox Cine, but also several of the BFI film hubs, including Film Hub Scotland and ICO, Film Hub Wales. So yeah, it is BFI funded, and it's essentially a free online database of access materials. So you can track and also search for access materials. So if you've created a bunch of access materials, and you can upload information about it, and then say someone wants to screen an accessible screening of that film, they can search, they can find who to contact to potentially access those access materials. So it's just a really great resource to be able to kind of easily find out if a film has access materials or not. But yeah, please do check out Sidecard. It's also just a information resource platform. There's really useful how-to guides, there's glossaries. So yeah, do check it out.
Gorgeous, gorgeous glossaries. Thank you so much. We're on this journey. We're birthing a film. We've done the development. We've done the production. We've done the post-production. now we're moving on to like screening, film festivals. I'm sat with two curators, two programmers. So they're perfect people to ask questions to. I also wanted to say we were supposed to be joined by Lindsay Dryden, who unfortunately couldn't join us today as she was having a flare-up. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about Forward Doc and some of the work that they've done in terms of assessing film festivals. Thankfully, huge shout out to SQIFF. They were recognised as one of the most accessible film festivals. So basically, Forward Doc is an organisation. They do many, many different things, but specifically in this realm, they created this access survey that was held at many different film festivals. And I've actually got some stats in front of me, guys. So it is dangerous stuff. So 73% of disabled respondents experience some form of inaccessibility in their film festival experience, which I think shocking. Well, not in this case, but yeah. I feel like that's very representative, perhaps, of the film festival landscape in terms of, especially as like an independent filmmaker and you're trying to make connections, and film festivals are so important in terms of like that networking aspect. How do you find the people? How do you find your collaborators? And if it's inaccessible, that just completely ruins your whole experience. So that's the current state of where you're at. Forward Doc's doing some really incredible work. SQIFF's doing some really incredible work. It's really gorgeous and accessible, so like having a lovely time. But I want to ask you guys some questions. First off, like just like from a programming perspective, how do you program intersectionally, and how do you program in an anti-ableist way?
It's a funny question for me because it's kind of like just how I operate.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, oh, people don't do that. Of course not. But for me, I'm basically just looking at the film, sort of who's involved and who's been left out and why. If I'm seeing a documentary that's talking about, that was it. There was a film in Manchester about the Vogue scene. The entire cast was white. And the amount of times people said, doesn't matter if you're blue, purple, or yellow. And I was like, I would never have programmed that film. Because you're sort of going into a culture without having any recognition or, acknowledgement of maybe the other people who are missed out. And it might be good to be honest about that, or at least talk about why, as opposed to sort of just showing, trying to be straight with it and whilst knowing that you are excluding people. I guess I think about the venue. Venues are so important. Venues are so inaccessible so much of the time. I think about sort of who I'm working with, front of house staff, security staff, are they trained? I think people forget about that a lot. Like I always put a lot of effort into getting to know the actual staff of the venue, so they can sort of understand where I'm coming from and why it's important. So maybe I want to change the labels in the toilets. Maybe I need to give extra signage where we've done that before. If we're being a star, having like sort of images of the cinema or the entrance to it, so that there's more idea about how I'm going to get there, what's it going to look like. Some of anxiety, as well as many, many other things. That's great. Am I going off topic?
No, I think this is. I'm just like nodding along. I'm like, I should be taking notes. This is really good.
Yeah.
Carry on.
You're thinking about the entire journey from communicating to film to then getting there, watching the film, what happens afterwards. And I guess the way I end up doing it is trying to put myself not necessarily in my own shoes, but maybe my grandma's shoes, or maybe people I know, or also because if you're experienced enough, you tend to see what goes well and what doesn't go well. So you can chat to me afterwards. I have a very muddled brain, ADHD, so it's very easy for me to forget that maybe something's important. But it's kind of making those notes. And I don't know, when it comes to intersectional films, most of the time I'm trying to make people make some for me. And I basically I've spent the last 10 years just going up to people and being like, you should make a film. Let me help you. Exactly. Putting together meeting things like the Lonely Arts ad later, like so many films, like queer DIY intersectional films, were made because they got to meet each other, find each other, and then actually put a project together. When I'm like, and I guess when I'm looking at submissions, I'm looking for Black stuff, I'm looking for queer stuff, I'm looking for disabled stuff. Can they combine it together? But actually, what kind of story are you saying? There's so many. You're looking at a story form of sometimes, say, like a disabled thing, being like, I have a disability, but I'm really trying hard for this goal. I will fight for this goal, and I've succeeded. Or trans people, I am trans, and I'm now going to have this thing done, and now I'm complete. I spend a lot of time just weeding those out. I'm not afraid to weed those out. I don't care who's made it. I just want a good film. I feel like I'm fumbling. So.
No, that was like Let Them Cook. That
Yeah.
was gorgeous. Do you have anything else?
How do I improve upon that? So I guess one thing I like to think about when I'm programming is that I had the wonderful opportunity of programming with Clare last year at BFI Busting the Bias, which was a disability-centric festival. And it was amazing having programming up at BFI South Bank and so many disabled people there and on screen. And I had quite a few people coming up to me afterwards and being like, I've never seen my stories up on the big screen before, like thank you so much. And I think that just really like drove me to keep finding these stories that resonate with people because they've just never seen themselves before. And it's not that the stories aren't out there, they're just not necessarily being promoted on a platform that big. I think in terms of intersectionality and anti-ableism, just very much like looking past the colonial gaze and gender binary and really just thinking about also like the disability justice model, I think. A little segue there, but I'll let you. I'll let you because with We Crip Film.
Oh, okay. Oh my goodness, sorry. I've really just been enjoying this. I forgot that I can talk. So disability justice, gorgeous. Created by Citizen Ballad. So they're an incredible intersectional community from San Francisco. The 10 principles, they're not all coming to mind, but one of them is intersectionality, cross-disability solidarity,
having those marginalized people sort of leading,
yes,
and sort of more, privileged sort of supporting sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And it's sort of what I really like is that you're thinking about everybody, like it's minoritized groups to the front, but it's also people that may not realize that they're like prison, or that that they're actually there's some change that can be made. You might not see yourself as disabled, but maybe actually you're struggling with that thing to an extent that it's actually interfering with your life. Those are valid things. And actually, I was thinking, Charlie, when you're talking about programming research, like the films aren't always going to come to you. Sometimes you have to reach out and get that network. Like, we will basically message each other and be like, I just found this really cool film, and we will tell each other. I think it's really important not to have your ego get in the way of
no gatekeeping.
No gatekeeping, like and that's filmmakers, that's programmers, that's venues. We all work together. We ain't got that many funds. We're probably exhausted. It's actually there to work together and make something good. Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I feel like we've touched on this, that like fringe festivals and smaller scale, more indie seem to be able to do access better. Do you think there's a reason for that? Do you think it's because this is the thing, they have less funds and yet they seem to be more accessible? Why? Discuss.
Interesting. You start, Charlie.
We could go on this for a while.
Yeah.
But a little stopwatch maybe.
Okay. I'll keep time.
I don't think it's necessarily easier. It's definitely not easier. I think if anything, it's probably harder because less people, less capacity, less funds, etc. Just like what you were saying. But I think there's also less red tape and less bureaucracy and less kind of departments and groups of people to navigate. I think if there's a smaller team of people who are full of passion and genuine interest, I think it is perhaps in that aspect easier to deliver on access. But the biggest shame is that there's so many of these institutions and corporations that absolutely have the means to be more accessible, more inclusive, and it's just a lack of want, not necessarily a lack of funds. And then you find that these smaller festivals or even volunteer-led groups, they're somehow holding up everything and carrying so much of the weight. So, we have so many distributors and filmmakers that will have very well-funded films, don't think about access materials, but if a small festival wants to put on accessible screenings, they will, out of pocket, go and create those files, which is just not okay. To put it lightly, keep it PG, but
yeah, no, I also wonder if there's fear from the institutions. This is from, like, I've worked for the BFI in and out last 10 years, and I've also worked in councils. They're actually very similar in the sense of who you're having to respond to and the fear that creates of what to say. There's this kind of big fear that you just have like one random person be really angry at you, and it's like, oh no, we'll step back, sort of thing. It's very much a status quo kind of attitude, and why would we change it, sort of thing. Like I feel like it kind of be very stuck and sort of thing when you want to be dynamic, and also maybe we have less funding or different funding streams. Maybe you're not feeling as accountable to people who may make you feel like that. Oh no, I don't know. I find it very strange because like I've been suggesting things all the time. I get like these weird blank looks. I'm talking about institutions, big institutions here, and I always find it quite interesting that there's lack of dynamism, like sort of like just go. And the way I've learned is to just do it, just to go. Like when like Teresa started whatever the DIY Film Festival, and then I joined the next year, and basically we just wanted our mates to come. That was kind of like the guiding principle. We were two disabled queer femmes who wanted our queer disabled friends to go, and we wanted to make sure that everyone, as many people could go if they wanted to, and that kind of what drove us, and it just simply just made sense. It just kind of like, this is a core principle of ours, of course we're going to do it like that. And like I'll never forget, I think it was the last one in 2016. You remember there was like this lesbian couple from Birmingham, and they came all the way down from Birmingham
With their guide dog.
Because they knew, and advertising, like that they felt welcomed from online, because we explicitly stated these are the resources that we have.
And they were visually impaired.
Impaired as well, yeah. So partially sighted, and that always will stay with you. I feel like once you've had that reward, you I really can't conceive of not wanting to welcome people. And what I've noticed is, as I've, so to speak, gone up in my career, is that movement, that thing kind of shifts. And there's like different departments, as you're saying, you're trying to speak to. There's also definitely a fear of criticism, and maybe not really sure how to respond to that, because you're going into a space where you will find people who might complain about having subtitles in that film. You might find people who might complain about having audio description. Suddenly they're aggrieved, and you've got to respond to that. I don't care. I'm very happy to speak up and stuff, but I realise I'm in the minority again with that sort of attitude. Not again. So yeah, I think it's like this attitude shift, and I've been harassing BFI about it for years. I've been like, even just the lift in the front of the South Bank, I've been angry about that for like 5 years. Sorry, Claire.
No, it's
But-
fine. It's okay, it's fine.
You know, I did an event called We Were Always Here, and I had to be outside guiding people with wheelchairs to the other entrance because the lift wasn't working, and the volunteers didn't realise there was another lift.
And I feel like that's a very perfect amalgamation of like,
I mean, there's like a massive, I think I recently did this massive capital resources project, like everything's changed up, and that lift's still the same. And obviously, it's not about you, Claire, it's about well, no, because I think sometimes people have to think as well. I think when institutions get criticised, they take it personally, and it's actually being like, why haven't you done this? Like, really actually interrogating that. And I feel like a lot of big institutions, maybe because of their funding streams, maybe because of their structure, they get really scared of interrogating of their bias, what that really means, and being like, actually, we haven't done this. Oh shit, we're sorry. Just say sorry. Do it. Sorry.
Just say sorry. No, no, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think you put that really well, like in terms of like the bureaucracy of it all. But before I go to like audience questions, I think, sorry, the little lesbian couple with the guy dog has made my heart fully sing, and I feel like
it was exactly. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, and like that's precisely the energy of like this whole event, and having queer disabled people come together in this space is incredible. It's so good.
Yeah.
So I want to open it up to questions. I don't hand or shout. Oh, I see one at the front. And it's Teresa. Teresa. Do you want to shout and then
I can break
repeat,
it.
or- Sorry, Tara's making a move.
Aww.
Yeah, so I told you I'm proactive.
Just do it.
Oh, you knew I'd be like jumping in there like a kid in school going, me. Thank you so much. That was so amazing. And I've learned stuff, and I've made notes, and I just think you are all insanely brilliant, like at what you're doing. So thank you for that. So I just have two questions. One is very, very quick. The other one's a bit more difficult. I just want to also briefly say, Charlie, the whole thing about descriptive captions just spoke to me. I also have ADHD, so I watch everything with captions, and and we have to sort of change this sort of culture of thinking that, access is only for, say, a narrow audience. Actually, it can be really, it doesn't have to be good for everyone, but actually it can be, right? So the first question, which is very small, I just wanted to ask Claire. You were talking about an access budget for
Films.
Yeah, is it only for films, or can festivals access that too?
That's a great question. So again, talking of the bureaucracy of it all and the funding streams and how BFI is funded, it's specifically just for films.
Right. Okay.
If there's a need for a festival access budget, maybe that's a good conversation that we could have in a networking session.
I was going to say would you mind if I ask a very quick second question, which is basically then, and it's a very painful question because it's about money, and it's about how disabled people are so devalued in our, shitty capitalist society. I recently, a couple of years ago, I did a research project. We looked at accessible festivals, and we realised that, as you say, the smaller festivals are, doing the most work. Sort of queer and queer adjacent festivals are doing so much work, but festival organisers are exhausted. They are burning out. They are doing so much work for so little pay and remuneration, and I don't think it's sustainable. So my question is, and it's a really difficult question, and I'm sorry, I don't expect you to have all the answers, but how can smaller festivals and amateur filmmakers, make accessible events and films when, in the society we live in, access can be so expensive? And like I said, it's a painful question because, there shouldn't be a price on access. The two people who came down to access our films, that was everything. But on a funding, summary, it's like, oh, you had two people access your audio description, but actually, you can't monetize these things. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. Really, my question is, how can we, as smaller film festival producers, how can we make things accessible when it is so difficult, when you guys are burning out, when it's not fair, and when there's no access fund, there's no money? What do you do? Sorry, I know it's a really shitty hard question.
No, that was like
It just brings back memories, because that last festival we did, we had really good funding to to make from the Heritage Lottery, but we weren't allowed to make money from ticket sales or pay ourselves or anything.
Oh.
So we done the most successful festival for everybody else.
Yes.
We were burnt out and broke, and there wasn't another whatever film festival, and it's something that I think it's a thing about, I guess, the focus is on funding sort of thing. Maybe the BFI and other big funders aren't seeing the big picture, but also there's the thing about targets as well, because like isn't it constantly, oh, not enough people have come, they won't fund you and stuff. And,
do you want to? I can say. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think in terms of monetization, I hate to monetize disabled people and access, but the reality is that, you know, it's a quarter of our population that are disabled, and, you know, we have the purple pound. For anyone that doesn't know, that's the kind of theory around the spending power of disabled people and their families, which is in the billions. And because services aren't accessible, companies aren't receiving that profit. So I think for disabled people to turn up and be loyal customers in any form of life, I think access has to be reliable and the default, and that's what a lot of funders don't understand. So what you were saying about, oh, well, only 2 people use the AD, but if you have it be reliable year after year, you're going to see that audience develop, just like any other form of audience development for any other demographic. Obviously, we're in a really struggling climate at the moment for the arts. Everyone is really feeling it. And, you know, people are having to look at other methods such as sponsorships, partnerships, again, just kind of furthering capitalism. And yeah, I think there's not one blanket answer. I think it's going to be a multitude of information and resource sharing, but also understanding that you're not going to get it 100% right the first time you do it, and don't bite off more than you can chew. Like, access is constantly developing and evolving, and we're not expecting you to have every single access provision under the sun if you don't have the money for it. You know, concentrate on one provision and deliver it really well, and just build upon that and expand on that. Obviously, it's difficult because you only have so much money that you can receive from funders, but I think it's also just about reframing your expectations as well, so that it doesn't feel so hopeless, to be honest. But yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. I can't, you know, say everything that I want to say, given the time we have, but yeah.
Speaking as the funder, I will just quickly speak as the funder, well, not really the funder, but speaking as the funding institution. So, the BFI has a new strategy. It's called Screen Culture 2033. Ooh, delicious. What does that actually mean? So one of the ambitions is to diversify audience. So they've acknowledged that they are not hitting targets in terms of like disabled audiences. Like, they're well aware that that's not happening. I think one thing that we can talk about is, like, from a BFI perspective. So we have a relaxed screening program, and to get that, to make that happen, there was a lot of pushback internally into like make this relaxed screening program happen, because they were like framing it within like the traditional terms of success, as in like, what's the numbers? How many people are coming to this? Oh, there's only 5 people in the audience. Why are we doing this? What do you mean the tickets are pay what you can? That makes no sense. Capitalist. So it's like, how do we reframe what success looks like? How do we introduce these ideas, like concepts from disability justice? Concepts like crip time. What is crip time? Introducing people into what crip time is, and familiarizing that. So I think fundamentally, if we want to get to like the point where funders realize that they do need to start giving film festivals an access budget, they do need to start incorporating that into their funding streams, I think it is a conversation around understanding and education and creating that awareness, which from the work that We Crip Film does, from the work that I'm doing, I feel like it is coming. It definitely is coming, but it's a process. And it's also, like, as you said, it's like ensuring that we don't get burnt out. It's ensuring that it's sustainable for us as well as for everybody else. So I feel like the change, I'm I'm here for like a disability revolution. That's what I'm feeling, guys. So I think it's coming, but in a quick time fashion. Yeah, gorgeous. And question here: would you like a microphone, or you can? Thank you, Tara.
Hi, it's Alison. It's not so much a question, but to just let you know that Triple C's got funding from Screen Scotland. So there's a steering group which is got a year-long project driving change for deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent creatives in Scotland. So I'm on the steering group for that, and it just got launched recently. So there's a whole lot of webinars going to be taking place in in-person events. And they're developing a talent database, which is on the Triple C website. So just want to give you a shout out for that. And there's 5 access coordinators in Scotland now. I was one of the first. There's 25 of us, I think, UK-wide now. And they've just announced training for the next round. And the deadline's like 1 minute to midnight on the 31st of October or something like that. But I just wanted to give you the shout out for that.
Amazing.
Gorgeous.
Can I steal that? Can I steal that mic for a second?
Oh, stealing the mic.
There's people down here with hands up.
Okay. Would you like to speak? I don't know how long the wire is. If you just speak it and then I'll repeat it.
Okay. It's so a little bit like Kiara was saying, also just mention something that might be useful to folks.
Oh,
that's
perfect.
happening. In terms of resource, and I also have a specific question which kind of works from your question. I'll try and just speak carefully. So I am part of a movement called the Universal Recognition Movement, which it's disabled-led. I founded it, and it's led by deaf, neurodivergent, and disabled people, and we are trying to make the future more accessible for everybody. We've just last year started a partnership with a thing called Donor Economics Action Lab, which isn't anything to do with donuts, unfortunately, but it's to do with making the economy, so how we produce and provide for one another, fairer for people. We have an event coming up, or that we've just confirmed, that's online on the 6th of November. So if you look them up and us up, we'll be sharing information about that. One of them is a workshop around value and different types of value. So we'll be including talking about things like crip time, just even things like how many spoons you have, and just getting people to think a bit differently about value systems. And then there's also.
Sorry, I was going to say, because we need to repeat that, I just want to make sure that you will capture it.
Yeah, I'm taking notes.
Really,
Don't worry.
I know, I was wrong.
And then also there's going to be a talk that is around marginalised leadership, where I'm particularly going to be talking about people funding marginalised leadership in these kind of social change things. I know it's a bit broader than film, but I just think people are asking those kind of questions. So this is why we're trying to get these kind of thoughts in front of a wider global audience, especially when it comes to economics, where I think we think that's really big and scary and not something that we can get involved in. But yeah, we can. It's really quite simple actually when we start to break it up. And we've been thinking about different value systems for ages, and disability justice when it comes to curriculum and things like that. So there's that. There's also going to be an in-person event, hopefully on the 8th of November in Glasgow, that people are welcome to attend, with a social event in the evening, just so that it's fun. And my question off the back of that is, and this is something that we're going to be speaking about at the event, because often funders will want to fund things that are for the public good, that means that money often gets dispersed, whereas if you have marginalised leadership, it is for the public good to fund that particular person or particular group specifically, and allow them to make profit so that they work as a bit like a social enterprise and things like that. We'll be discussing those kind of things, but also when budgets are set in terms of what funders are able to allocate, we often find that we are receiving the same funding amount as other organisations, whereas we're trying to include access within that, which obviously means that we don't have the same amount of budget because we'll have to use that for, live interpretation and things like that. And so when you're thinking about equity rather than equality, actually looking at weighting those budget funding so that you get more funding for people who are trying to consider access. So there's like an extra access budget, so that it brings that kind of equity and fairness into it. So my specific question, and there might not be an answer, is do you know any funders who specifically fund access? And if there's any, like in terms of networking, anyone in the room can answer this. Does anyone know of any funders that specifically will fund access in addition to a budget which will just be for any other festival, creative project you want to be funding?
Gorgeous. I'm going to just paraphrase that quickly for everybody. Sorry, what was your name? Becky. So Becky just said that she has created this movement called Universal Recognition Movement. There's 3 events coming up. One's online on the 6th of November, talking about values. The second is a talk about marginalised leadership within social change. And then there's also an in-person social within Glasgow. On the 8th of November. Amazing. And then your question was specifically around, are there any organisations that are specifically funding access, depending on the project? Gorgeous. I can answer that question quickly. Yeah. So as I mentioned, so the BFI Filmmaking Fund, they have like this big access pot. So you currently just funded a film called Retreat, which is the first BSL directed feature. It's like BSL dialogue feature film. That's a huge access budget. We're talking many interpreters working on the day. I think it's I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but in terms of equity, that was a huge deaf cast crew. So therefore the access costs for that project were very large, but obviously in comparison to another project where there aren't as many deaf people on set, it's going to be smaller. So in Filmmaking Fund, yes, but in terms of other funding, it's not the same. And I think that's also a conversation around cohesion around how the BFI funds. But that's we can talk about that later. Does anybody know of any other organisations that wants to shout out? No, and that's the state of the arts. So I'm really sorry about that. But that's precisely why being in this room is so important, is so that we can have these conversations, so that we can connect, so that we can come together to rally and lobby these organisations to change the way that they fund. I am aware that we have reached 6 o'clock. So what I'm going to suggest is that we maybe shift more into the networking side of things. If you have any specific questions for myself, Charlie, Tara, please come on up to us. But what I would really love is just for you guys to talk to each other. Start making your notes on the Lonely Arts board. It's going to be a legacy thing so that people can reach out to you. You can put your social media, email, whatever works best for you. Bab's up in the corner. Bab's there, holding up gorgeous multicoloured felt tip pens. We've got postcards, we've got Polaroids, we've got joy. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you guys for being here. This is one of the best well-attended disabled focus initiative things that I've seen at a film festival for a long time. So I think that's a real testament to each and every one of you for being here. I also want to thank Charlie, Tara, Lucy, Louise, Louisa and Andrew for all of the gorgeous access. And also huge thank you to SQIFF for bringing We Crip Film into this partnership, because it's so great to be here and to meet all of you afterwards outside. So we're going to be networking in more of this space because I think it's really hot in here. So I think that will be nicer to be out there. Do you have anything else?
No, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
That's so great. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been really gorgeous.